What is up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Variant, the podcast.
Variant the podcast.
I'm Arris, and I'm here with Tim.
And I'm Tim.
What's up, Tim?
What's going on, man? What's up, Variant Nation?
I have a story, Tim.
You always have a story. As long as it doesn't have to do with food coming out of your teeth, I'm good. It doesn't.
So I had to go to Target, I believe last week, and I was just going to...
Wait a second. We have to address something right off the bat here.
What?
That you sound like you have two giant cotton swabs shoved up your nose.
I have the rhinovirus.
You have the rhinovirus?
I have the rhinovirus. I'm not even joking. I legitimately have the rhinovirus.
So is that... Did you get that on safari or?
I mean, I did go to the Dallas Zoo about a week or two ago.
My God.
I know. But no, the rhinovirus
You got the rhinovirus from the giraffes?
As it turns out, the rhinovirus is the most common strain for the common cold.
It is just a cold, yes.
Yeah, it's just a head cold. But it sounds a lot more like exotic than it really is, right? It's
like rhinovirus. When you get into anything that we call, what we call our different normal sicknesses and stuff like head cold or sinus infection or whatever, there's a medical technical term and it all sounds super fancy.
Well, it's funny because my daughter's the one who gave it to me. She had it first. And when we got the results back, they're like, yeah, it's the rhinovirus. I'm like, the what virus? They're like, it's just...
You're like, oh, we're going to die.
It's just like, it's just the most common strain for the common cold. Yeah. It's fine.
And your response to that was, lead with that next time.
Yeah, the rhino. It's like...
Just say it's a cold, man.
She's just like, where did this come from? Does this originate from the country, this country? Like, what's happening?
Yeah.
She didn't leave the country.
Is this a variant? Yeah, is this one of the variants?
We haven't left, I swear. We've been following the rules.
You've been in Costa Rica or Brazil, haven't you?
But yeah, that's why I'm congested.
Yes.
So
you are congested.
I'm not sick anymore. This is like the residuals. You know when you get sick, like you're sick those first couple of days, but then like the congestion just lingers for like a week. I'm at that point.
Yeah. It's really fun for me, like across the hall, just listening. It sounds like you're bathing in a bucket of Kleenex.
Hey man, but I have hand sanitizer. You know, I'm washing my hands. It's fine. It's clean.
Do what you got to do. You got to get it out.
Anyway, before I
wanted to bring that up so that everybody's like, why is Arris okay? Why does Arris sound like?
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Variant.
Yes,
but before I had said rhinovirus, I went to Target. As one tends to do, because, who doesn't like Target, Tim? You can find anything you need at Target.
Yeah, you were trying to spread the rhinovirus.
This was before I had the rhinovirus. Anyway, I'm at checkout, and as you know, and everyone who watches Variant knows, I like mostly wear comic book t-shirts, right?
Yep.
I had a Marvel shirt on, and at self-checkout, even though it's self-checkout, they have the employees that sit there.
Yeah.
Right? So he walks towards me, and he's like, hey, I like your shirt. I'm like, oh, thanks. And this was the week of the first episode of Loki premiered, right? It was like it was like the day before, so it was a Tuesday.
What was the guy's name?
I don't know.
Come on, man, dude. The guy you got to.
I'm gonna call him.
You know what I mean? You're gonna disrespect him like that?
Teddy. His name's Teddy.
His name's Teddy.
Yeah.
If I go back there and I'm gonna ask for Ted.
Ted, but we're good now, so I call him Teddy.
Oh, that's okay. That's your boy.
So he comes around. He goes around. He's like, nice shirt, I'm like, thanks. And so knowing Loki comes out the next day, I'm like, oh, are you excited for Loki tomorrow? Right? He's like, what? I'm like, the new Loki Disney Plus series. He's like, oh, I saw advertisements for that. I'm like, yeah, it's coming out tomorrow from the MCU and stuff like that. I'm like, do you have Disney Plus? And he's like, no. He goes, ever since Disney bought Lucasfilm and stuff, I don't mess with that stuff anymore. So I'm like, well, have you watched The Mandalorian? And then he said he tried it. So I guess at some point he had Disney Plus, because how are you gonna watch it? So he said he tried it. But this is why I'm bringing up the story. This next line right here. He says, yeah, I tried it. I watched the first couple episodes, but it wasn't very Star Wars.
The Mandalorian?
Yes. So I got so taken off guard because this man literally told me that The Mandalorian, he didn't like it because it wasn't very Star Wars, and he likes Star Wars. That was a quote. It wasn't very Star Wars, and he likes Star Wars. That's what he said. So in my head, I'm like, wheels are, I'm like, what the? I'm like, this is the most Star Wars is. Like, the only more Star Wars than this is anything Lucas has touched. But besides anything Lucas has touched, this is the most Star Wars.
Did you drill down to see, like, are you a fan of the recent trilogy and that's his Star Wars?
See, I want,
because that doesn't even make sense.
This was as we had the signs of my daughter was getting sick, so I was there for popsicles and stuff. So I'm like, I'm getting cough medicine. So I'm like, I don't got time for this. Plus, I'm going to be polite because I know this is going to open a whole can of worms. I'm like, oh, yeah, well, you should try it again. It's really good. It's one of my favorite shows ever. And, it's just like, bye. And I left. But in my head, I'm like,
we can't be friends anymore, Teddy.
I'm like, this freaking guy said that one of the most Star Wars shows ever is like, because all that told me is like, oh, so you don't know Star Wars. So you think you know Star Wars, but you don't know Star Wars if you're saying The Mandalorian isn't Star Wars. Am I right?
You're 100%
Yeah, right?
That's like, I'm confounded. I'm dumbfounded by this logic.
Literally, I'm driving home in my head. I'm just going over. I'm like, what I just said here. I'm like, literally, besides the prequels and the original trilogy, which is Lucas, right? There's nothing more Star Wars than The Mandalorian.
The entire premise of the show is drawing off of Lucas's version.
That's what I'm saying.
Of Star Wars.
Anything that's
why it was so popular amongst Star Wars fans.
Yes,
because it brought back OG Star Wars, and it had the tone that we all love.
I don't know if you meant like because Han wasn't in it, C-3PO was in it. I didn't get into it, but I was just so taken back by how are you saying this isn't Star Wars?
But it's like, so then what are you saying? You're saying it's not Star Wars unless it's the original Star Wars? Well, then that means nothing else can be Star Wars.
Exactly.
That's just, it doesn't even make sense.
It was so weird, but I'm like, because I want to say, I'm like, look, anything that Lucas, Filoni, or Jon Favreau touch will be the most Star Wars you're ever going to get. Like, that's what I wanted to say, but I'm not about to get in. I'm not going to get into this
you
right
just
now.
stopped right there on the dime and said, listen, Teddy, we're divorced.
I want you to walk your way back to the t-shirt section. I know for a fact they have some Star Wars shirts.
This is irreconcilable differences.
So that's my notes. I was thinking about it ever since. I'm like, I was actually going to tell you, but I'm going to save it. I'm going to save it for the podcast because I was like, I can't believe someone like, because any true diehard Star Wars, like any Lucas fan knows that The Mandalorian and like the Clone Wars, anything Filoni or Favreau touches, like that's like, Star Wars, like our babies. So I'm like, you clearly are not you're like, nothing against them. You're a casual Star Wars fan, but you're definitely not a diehard Star Wars fan if you're saying that.
I mean, I guess, it's like one of those things where everybody's got their own viewpoint and their own opinion. It's all subjective, like we've talked about. But that is not at all where I thought that was going, because I thought you were going to say like, oh, I'm not a fan because of what Disney's done with Star Wars, with the trilogy or whatever. No, there's a lot of people that are in that camp, but that's a first. I haven't heard that one.
Yeah, it is pretty funny though too, like just seeing like, so we're so much in the world, we're always talking about this, and everyone we kind of communicate with is in that world also for the most part.
Right.
So when you especially when you meet like strangers and stuff who are like, Loki show. What Loki show? Oh, I did see a poster for that. It's like, you don't know what the Loki show is? Where do you live? You know what I mean?
I have to tell you, I've talked to a lot of people. I mentioned this to you recently, I think. I talked to a lot of people that they're just like, nah, Marvel. I hate what Marvel does, and their cookie cutter Girl Scout cookie.
That's so funny.
Superhero television shows and movies.
The cookie cutter.
They just roll them off the conveyor belt out of the clone machine and are all the same. And you're just like, what are you, as a fan, as someone who likes what Marvel does and appreciates the, the different styles and things like that. I'm not just within Marvel, but, superhero content in general. I can appreciate different styles. I do not get that. For me, that's almost like, I don't know. It's a weird perspective for me.
Yeah.
Because I can't relate to, being so, tied to one way of doing things that the other way is like your arch nemesis.
That's funny.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I have my opinions and my subjective views, tastes, and things like that, just like every one of us do. But I can, you have to be able to appreciate like different styles, perspectives, different, like Marvel obviously is more lighthearted fare than some of the stuff we've seen DC roll out.
For sure.
Right? The Joker and so forth. I can enjoy Endgame and Infinity War just as much as I can enjoy the Joker or, the Snyder Cut or so on. And they're wildly different.
But that's what kind of makes it great, though,
yeah,
right?
That's what makes it fun. And it doesn't mean you're going to like every single outing, just like I don't like every single outing for Marvel, and I don't like every single outing for DC. It's, individual pieces, but this whole Marvel, I hate Marvel, Marvel sucks, DC rules, or the opposite. Marvel's awesome and DC sucks.
It's like everything, you always have to pick a side, right?
Yeah.
You can't just be like neutral.
I guess that's what it is. It's the tribalism, that that's not my camp.
It's like, why?
I'm a floater.
You like Spider-Man, so you can't like Batman. Like,
did I just call myself a turd?
But what's also ironic to that Target story is, because, I go to Target, I collect things. Even though I went there for popsicles and stuff like that. I had to pass like toy aisle, right?
Yeah, this is like borderline a daily project early in the morning, pictures of Arris at Target.
So I had found Hot Wheels has this line called Starships, where Hot Wheels makes vehicles of Star Wars starships.
Right, yeah.
And I found the Bad Batch one, the Marauder.
Oh, you did?
So I had that. I was purchasing that as he was talking to me. So that was kind of like more insult to injury, where like that's a Filoni show and like thing that I'm currently buying, like something Filoni had a hand in, and also the Mandalorian. So I'm like, look what I'm holding. Look what I'm holding. You're insulting me.
You got real problems, Teddy.
Go watch the Bad Batch and get some culture.
Get yourself some culture and education.
But speaking of Loki, Tim, the premiere.
It finally happened.
It is
upon us.
And it is the #1 premiere for a Disney Plus original series thus far.
Episode 2 actually is out today.
I know.
As we're recording this. You guys will hear this. So we'll, when you guys hear this tomorrow or Friday, you'll be saying, episode 2 is already out. We know.
Talk about the end credit scene.
We know.
Because it didn't get spoiled for me, but I did hear that there's an end credit scene that everyone's freaking out about. I know that much.
Okay, well, don't say anything. I don't want to know nothing.
So
I don't want to know anything.
I don't know anything more than that. I was like, click away, X.
Yeah, dude. I'll tell you after when the first one dropped, we were working on some new episodes and so on, and I was uploading some stuff, and had something popped up in the feed.
Always.
And it was about Loki, but it had the hashtag of what do you call it? Not Time Variance Association. And I thought for sure, I was like, you son of a... It wasn't Kang the Conqueror.
Oh, the Timekeepers?
No, maybe it was Kang. I think it was Kang the Conqueror.
Okay.
Which, by the way, is a new History of Kang the Conqueror is out today.
Go watch it now.
On the Vain Variant channel. So go check that out, because we anticipate, or we are speculating that he is going to at some point make an appearance in the Loki series because of his relationship with the Time Variance Agency, or authority, rather. Sorry. Anyway, I saw this hashtag, and I believe it was Kang the Conqueror. And I was like, man, I thought it got spoiled, and then there was nothing in the episode.
Yeah.
So I was like, thank God.
That's like the worst thing, though, because, I'd like tell you that I would preferably like to let episodes build up just so I could have like 2-hour stretches or
not this though.
Yeah, but you can't. You can't.
Like
even if you want to, like there's no way, especially for what we do.
You'll get wrecked.
Like because obviously we're on the Variant, logged into the Variant
Constantly.
YouTube page all the time. So like
social
our feed
media
is just it's gonna recommend like all the stuff that we talk about. So it's like. If
not
you
to
don't
mention,
watch it.
Not to mention, we have so many associates like throughout the industry, and we'll get emails. Did you see this? He's like, what'd you guys think of this?
Dude, I've had friends text me and ruin stuff.
Spoilers,
because they just think because of like
what we do.
They're like, oh, clearly you've seen. I'm like, dude, no. I wait to watch the episodes at night, not 9 o'clock in the morning.
You psychopath.
I got work to do.
Some of us have work.
Yeah. Jeez. But
it's like Bill Burr, that stand-up routine.
Oh, you got nowhere to be.
You got nowhere to be? Oh no, it's Sebastian Maniscalco, not Bill Burr.
Yeah.
You got nowhere to be at 8 a.m. on a Monday?
But anyway, Loki again, #1 streamed premiere for Disney Plus thus far, which is crazy. Because I was telling you earlier, that means it's beat out The Mandalorian, Falcon Winter Soldier, and WandaVision.
Well, the first two, Falcon and Winter Soldier and WandaVision, that doesn't surprise me.
But there's still,
the Mandalorian, it does surprise me. Well, but did they connect it to? I didn't see this part. Did they connect it to just Mandalorian's debut in season 1?
I believe so, because there was no mention in season 2.
Okay,
I think it was just the debut of the series premiere episode.
So then that makes sense.
But the one before this, I did look into it a little bit. The Falcon and the Winter Soldier had the previous record, so that beat. So because that was a big one though too, because everyone knew that Sam was going to be Captain America.
Right,
so there was a lot of hype around like, where is this going to go?
And it looked, from the trailers, it looked more MCU than WandaVision ended. It looked originally. Although WandaVision was great.
But Loki, he's been around since 2012, the first Avengers movie. So he's
a fan favorite.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially Tom Hiddleston as Loki.
Which is why they brought him back, an alternate version of him. They're like, oh, well, you know, he's going to escape to a different timeline. And so he's still alive at this point in time, which, you know, when we start talking about this episode, is like the coolest part for me of this whole episode.
There were several things that were standouts. In this series or in the first episode that I was like, oh, this is...
Well, the craziest thing, spoilers obviously, for the entire first episode, if that wasn't apparent. But the craziest thing, because with this show off the bat that I loved is the fact that it's clearly going to have a wide impact on the MCU as a whole. Yeah. Right? Like you're dealing with timelines and, you know, it literally opens up with that scene from Endgame where they go back in time and stuff like that. And you see like Loki even reference, like, how come you didn't capture the Avengers and stuff like that when he's being held on trial and stuff like that from the TVA. So I'm really digging to see the ramifications this is going to have on the greater MCU.
Well, Kevin Feige even recently confirmed that this is going to be the biggest impact in terms of a series.
See, because it makes total sense.
On the MCU, which both of us actually said right after we saw it.
You could tell.
Yeah, you can tell this is going to be the biggest or the most impactful for the MCU in terms of all the series that we've seen so far, the three. Maybe all of them for the remainder of the year.
Yeah.
But he did confirm that this is going to be the most impactful series for the MCU.
For sure. I want to get to my favorite part of the series, which is I guess the last 20 minutes of it. Was like a 50-minute episode, but like because for me this episode was really just dissecting Loki. As a character. Yep. Like, and so much so, like even in like, you know, I told you this before we started recording, like after we watched the episode, where it's almost like the Omniverse, where you see like they painted it in such a picture where like, you know, because Owen Wilson, at this point in the episode, Owen Wilson's like, oh, Loki's here, we could use him. He's trying to recruit him to use him to catch this other person that's making a mess in the time stream,
Mr.
right?
Mobius.
Mr. Mobius, Owen Wilson, Mr. Mobius, which he's awesome, by the way.
Amazing.
He was great.
He was arguably my favorite part of the episode.
He's still second to Loki, but for me, yes,
I absolutely loved him as Mobius.
And did you notice that they were because... Well, there's so much stuff to talk about. We should have made a list of like how to go down. There's like the Infinity Stones, Cosmic Cube. But did you notice like when they were talking on the table, like the drinks they were drinking were drinks in the real world that are no longer exist. Yep. But since they're in the TVA, like the null time zone, they could have whatever they want. Yep. I thought that was so cool. Like the little attention to details with that. Very, very cool. But anyway, the whole Mr. Mobius is asking him is like, who are you? Like, what's your like? What do you want? What's your purpose? What are you trying to do? Yep. And you know, he tells him the whole thing. I'm born for glorious purpose. I just want to rule the world.
Spiel.
Yeah, and he's like, I want to rule the world. He's like, and then what? Space? You're gonna go to space? He's like, you're making fun of me. He's like, no, I'm literally asking, like, where does it stop? And you know, this goes on. They have this really cool back and forth for a while, but it ultimately, you know, ends well. Doesn't ultimately end yet because I don't want to get there yet. But Owen Wilson basically says like, look, Loki, you were created to be a villain. Like that's what you are, because they see everything, right? Like the whole point of this is like your destiny is predetermined, right? Like the TVA knows how, like they're God essentially, right?
Essentially,
they know the beginning, middle, and end. Like no matter what you do, this is going to be the end because this is why you were created.
They're omniscient.
Right. So no matter what you try to do or whatever, this is what you're doing. And he told Loki, he's like, look, you're the villain, dude. It doesn't matter what you do, you will always be the villain. And it was really cool coming from like a creator standpoint, because it's like, again, it's going to like the Stan Lees and Jack Kirby's and any creator being like, yeah, you make a villain because their whole point is to be the villain. You know what I mean? Like that, a hero is a hero, a villain's a villain, you know, stuff like that. So it was really cool to kind of like how in this null time zone, the TVA is acting almost as like, you know, the presence or the one above all in that sense, where like there's these godlike beings that are like controlling even these mighty beings like Thor and Loki and gods, like ants in that sense.
Exactly,
where they're like, because nothing in the TVA like works in this time, right?
Right.
Like
no magic,
no Infinity Stones, nothing. So, and you know, Loki comes to this realization, and it's like, so what? This is all like pointless. But I just really loved like Loki having to self-reflect and really like accept himself or get to like admit to himself like what he's really doing and why he's really doing it. And he, you know, it was like a therapy session, really.
Very much so.
All it really was. And it was so interesting. And it lasted like 20 minutes.
Yes.
And I thought it was so well done. I think this pilot is easily my favorite pilot for the MCU Disney Plus shows thus far.
Easily.
And that was just one bit of the episode. We're going to keep dissecting it. But I just love that chunk of the episode so much that I was like, wow, so you're really gonna, because the show is called Loki, and they're really getting into Loki. I'm like, yes, you're really gonna like live up to the name, because that was kind of, I love the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, love the WandaVision, but like some of my dislikes with like the Falcon and Winter Soldier and stuff is that a lot of the side stories and stuff like that in the personal life for me wasn't that compelling, you know, because I know the whole point of these shows is to like to get that side and not be just all the action-packed heroics. So that's what the movie's for. This is the dive deeper. But some of that stuff for the WandaVision and the Falcon and Winter Soldier wasn't like overly like drawing me in, right? Like it was interesting, but I wasn't like, I wasn't on the edge of my seat like 100% of the way, right? Right. Where with, I feel like Loki, again, I've only seen the first episode, but definitely for the first episode, I'm like, oh, like if you keep going this route and you're going to do stuff like because I love dissecting characters. Oh yeah. And that's what this whole first episode was, where they, you know, where it was Loki self-reflecting. I'm like, oh, if you keep going down this route and like, you know, keep exploring this, and then even how this is going to affect the greater MCU, because they even show him, like Mr. Morbius shows him everything he's done. And you got to remember, at this point in time, this is this Loki in the TV show series is the first Avengers Loki. Right. So nothing else has happened. Thor, Ragnarok hasn't happened, Infinity War, Endgame, and he's showing him all this stuff that we've seen already, because we know where his story ends.
He's not even aware of what happens in Thor: Dark World.
No, right, exactly. So when he sees his mother die, in that movie,
and in his role that he played in her death,
it was pretty much you know, his fault and stuff like that. That all that he sees all that, and then he sees himself die by the hands of Thanos, obviously in Endgame, was so cool, because that's when the realization came, like, oh, they're not joking, like, no matter what I do. Because we know, again, seeing Loki's arc, like he was villain, then he ultimately became like an anti-hero and started fighting along with his brother. He basically became a good guy by the end, right? He turned, right? Yeah. And he sacrificed himself for his brother and stuff like that in Endgame. So like he came to the realization, like, oh, so even if I do turn good and try to, you know, do good things, I'm still gonna die. And he's like, just basically saying, oh, you're right. Like, no matter what I do, it's pointless. So I thought that was really, really, really cool. The whole predetermined destiny thing. Because that's just fascinating in real life, right? Oh, yeah. Because people think that, you know, that's an argument that people have in life. Like, no matter what I do, you know, this is where I'm going to end no matter what choice I make, because God or whatever higher being has said so. Right. So I just think that's fascinating.
Yeah. The whole entire episode, as you said, for me, it wasn't just 20 minutes. The entire episode was a character examination for Loki as an entity within the MCU. Yeah. Who is this character down to his bone marrow, right? So we spent the entire episode dissecting him as he was going through all these kind of machinations, trying to figure out how to escape. Well, you know, first trying to subjugate people and show people his power, and it was totally pointless because he had no control there. Even from the time he steps out of the portal with the Tesseract in his hand, you see the Tesseract light dim.
Yes,
its power immediately shuts off as soon as they walk into the null zone.
I love how I called it the Cosmic Cube, because that's what it's called in the comic books.
Right, yeah,
I'm calling it the real name,
that's
guys.
Right, yeah. We're comic accurate around here. But yeah, you see that happen, and then later on, as you mentioned, he goes into that one drawer where he's trying to escape. You know, he very cleverly steals that neck bracelet that, you know, basically allows them to keep him in place and keep him from escaping or hurting anyone and so forth by manipulating his time and motion. But as he's trying to escape, he gets it off of himself and he puts it on the TVA agent, and has her kind of entrapped and is just messing with her, which is a really funny scene. Really actually, funny. Just has her going like back and forth in a loop. But he winds up in this one office where he goes to this one of the other TA. He's like an office agent for the TVA.
Oh, that bit was amazing.
He says, "I'll cut you like a fish." He says, "What's a fish?" He says, "Wait, what?" But he winds up in his drawer where he finds a whole bunch of Infinity Stones. And he's shocked, and that's where the realization comes in. And he actually stands up and he says, "Is this the greatest power in the universe?" Because up until that point, when Mr. Mobius was telling him, this kind of controls the timekeepers, and what we do here kind of controls everything.
Yeah.
There's nothing you can do. You're not going to be able to fight back. You're not going to be able to defeat us in any way. Everything you're used to as a quote unquote God in your universe, it's just non-applicable here.
It doesn't work here. Yeah.
Yeah. And Loki is like, yeah, whatever. I'm used to tricks, that sort of a thing. But in that moment, when he sees the Infinity Stones, that's when he really comes to grips with the reality of, oh, everything he's telling me is true. And that's when he winds up back in that room, forced to really fully start answering. Because at this point, when he finds the Infinity Stones, we've already gone through that kind of interrogation scene with Mr. Morbius, where he's asking questions and eventually leads to him asking the big question is, do you enjoy hurting people? Yeah. Right? He asks a whole series of interesting questions. And, what are you after? What do you want? And then after, kind of like you said, you're going to rule the earth. And then what? Space and this kind of a thing. And he's like, you're making fun of me and that whole spiel. But he ends up with the big question of, do you enjoy hurting people? Yeah. Why do you hurt people? Is it fun for you? And he winds up, at first he's being
like deflects.
Yeah, he deflects, but he's also being very arrogant, and he's, making light of what he's doing and telling him that he's going to hurt him and that sort of a thing. But in the end, when he realizes that he's come face to face with a power that he can't win against, he can't fight against in any way, it's totally futile. That's when he actually has to go back to the room on his own. He stops trying to escape. Mr. Mobius, when he winds up back in the room, he actually said to him, he's holding the Tesseract in his hand. He says, did you try to use that? Oh, yeah, several times. Loki says. But he, during that time is when he goes back in the room alone and he watches back the film reel that Mr. Mobius had put on, and he watches through all the way to his own death. And you see him.
The realization.
And Tom Hiddleston did such a good job with this, by the way. You see him kind of go through in his mind. He doesn't really say anything. He just kind of goes through it, and you see him come to grips with this reality of who he is and what his life is and what his purpose actually is.
The villain.
And it's almost as if he discovers, like, it's what I've always known, but this is what I've been running from.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be this. Right? So I've been trying to do all these other things because I knew I was weak. And he kind of says that very thing when he's talking to Mr. Mobius there in the end, when Mr. Mobius comes back in the room after he's seen the video and he kind of come to grips with the whole thing. They sit down, and that's when Loki, for the first time, he puts down the facade. And he kind of just goes through, and we get this really great, that scene.
Well, that explanation
was, yeah.
Well, he answers the why do you hurt people, and he says it's part of the trick. It's part of the illusion.
And he explains it.
Yeah.
And that scene was my favorite scene of the entire episode. That was my favorite scene because it gave us a clear and definitive look at the core of this character after going through all of these steps. And what they did to get to that, I just thought was so well written and so well directed. They just did a really good job with it.
It was great because it's the whole like bully thing, right? Like why do bullies bully people, right? It's because they have their own problems at home, whether they have like abusive parents or they have just problems at home. They have to get their anger out some way. And I love that the whole how when he answered, he's like, because it's part of the trick, it's part of the illusion.
It's part of the illusion.
It's like that way, like it's a defense. It's like that way I appear tough. I don't want to do it, but it makes me feel, it makes me look like a god, like I'm tough, like I'm bigger than I actually am. And I thought that was really, really, so it's all facade, right? Yeah. I thought just that one line, I love how when stories are written properly, there could just be like one line, one piece of dialogue that you take away that's like, oh wow, it's like it's part of the illusion, it's part of the trick. Because I remember in WandaVision too, the one line that still stuck with me is what is pain but love persevering, right? Or something to that effect. I don't know if I quoted that exactly, but those lines, there's certain lines like that just stick with you, and I feel like that's going to be one of them for me. And we're only the first episode.
Is it pain or grief?
Could be grief.
I think it might be grief. What is grief but love persevering?
Right, it's probably that.
Either way, it's a beautiful line.
Right, that's the sentiment we're trying to get across. And it's just those lines and those little messages like, wow, like that you just kind of encompass like the whole scene right there, right?
And that's why I say that was my favorite part of the entire episode, because it encapsulated everything they built up to, the entire episode they built up to that moment where he explains, I don't enjoy hurting people. I don't like it.
Yeah.
It's just part of the illusion. I have to do it because I'm weak and it's what I have to do to appear strong.
Yeah.
Or what he thinks he has to do to appear strong. And of course that's wrong. Like you said, it's the whole bully. Why do bullies bully? It's because they're dealing with their own insecurities, their own problems and so forth. And that's what they do to try and project a specific look, not realizing that what they're really doing is just worsening their own situation. They're worsening the people's view of them. And so it's, it's that whole, again, it's another thing is the hurting people hurt people. It's the same type of thing, but it gets to that. But it's such a melancholy moment for this character that we're all used to being just this kind of cunning, evil, but also, torn character, but he's strong and powerful at the same time. But, he knows he's in the shadow of Thor and all of that. But this was a very vulnerable moment for this character, and I just thought that they nailed it.
Yeah, they stripped him down only to set him up to be like, hey, we need you for this mission.
Right.
Which is, the end of the episode, we find out at the end of the episode, this other person that the TVA is trying to track down is Loki.
That's what he says.
That's what they said in the episode.
That's what he says.
So, again, we haven't seen episode 2. We don't know how that pans out. But as of episode 1, apparently there's another Loki running around that the reason why Mr. Morbius wants Loki is because who could stop Loki? Loki. Right. Right?
Yeah.
So, we'll see where that goes.
Now, the thing I thought was really interesting, and I'm sure everybody saw it. This is the second, in this first episode of Loki, this is the second reference to that demon character that seems like a direct reference to potentially Mephisto. Right? Now, there have been.
Can you imagine if this is the series that gives us Mephisto?
I would. What? That would be really fun.
WandaVision.
But there's people saying, no, that it was just a stained glass window referring to Loki because of the horns, and Loki wore horns in the first Avengers and that sort of thing. So technically it could, but we saw a similar image in WandaVision, right?
Did we? I don't remember that.
Yeah.
Where?
Yeah, in the one scene where you see, I believe it's Wanda's having like visions.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
And you see a reference, and it's also like a painting
when they're going
thing.
through her origin and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you have this situation going on, and it's like, okay, I guess you could technically say maybe Loki or this evil Loki is going throughout time and is doing, malicious stuff, and that's how they're going to all tie it together. But the way that they're touching on it, maybe that's the through line, that's the thread, is Loki is going to end up being, or this rogue Loki is going to end up being this character that's just kind of been hopping in and out of time and creating utter chaos. And we're going to see that kind of, play out throughout phase 3 and maybe even 4, through to the end. But I'm also wondering, because it's this reference to this demonic character, which, very much is resembling Mephisto, and all the things we saw in WandaVision, a lot of the things that are directly tied to Mephisto in the comics. I'm wondering, are they starting on something similar to what we saw with Thanos, with them, the way they did Thanos, where there was just these little Easter eggs.
They're trying to build up another big bad.
Exactly. And our next Thanos is Mephisto. I don't know that, obviously.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, are they starting that again, where they're going to be just dropping hints here and there, inserting pieces that in the comics are directly tied to this character, and then they're slowly going to bleed him out, and in the end, that's where the big battle is going to be, is against Mephisto.
Man, I so badly wanted it to be Galactus. I mean, obviously we don't know if it's gonna be Mephisto.
Well, yeah, it's almost,
but there's been no signs of Galactus at all. So.
I would imagine. I think this has been my theory before, was that if we do get Galactus again, I think it'll be at the end of phase 4 when they introduce the Fantastic Four. It'll be like leading into the next phase.
Right.
What did I say? I said phase 3 and 4 before. It's phase 4 and 5, right? So we're in phase 4 now.
We're in 4, yeah.
So phase 4, and then when we head into phase 5, because at the very end of phase 4 is when we're going to get the Fantastic Four, right? That's what they're teasing and alluding to. They said it's coming, but they haven't said exactly when. So I'm thinking that there'll be one story arc through phase 4, and then at the end is where we might get Galactus and Silver Surfer and all of that.
Right.
But I'm just wondering if that's where this is going, or is this going to be like, maybe like the female Loki is the one that's wreaking havoc?
Yeah.
Because at the very end of the episode, we see see this character.
Yeah.
You know, the TVA agents end up in another place. I believe was it prehistoric or was it like 1798 or something like that?
I can't remember. It was one or the other. Some kind of wilderness.
It wasn't prehistoric. It was it was like 1698. It was a cornfield,
right? It was like sort of like
it was the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, okay.
But I believe it was in the 16 or 1700s, and they find this that somebody's been using technology to drill for oil or something. Like they make some comment about somebody came all the way back here to try and strike oil or something. And that's when they find this shrouded character, and it did the oil so they could light the TVA agents on fire because it's murdering TVA agents. Yeah. And they never show who the character is.
They don't.
Now, that's one of the things that I thought was interesting. And, it very much could be the fact that it's just the female Loki and they're waiting to reveal that it's a female Loki. And that very much could be it. It's the most likely scenario.
Well, because we already know, from casting and stuff, there will be a female Loki in the series. Yeah.
But I'm also wondering, is that because there's been leaks and all this kind of stuff, is it a diversion? Is that going to be a diversion and this is going to end up being another character entirely?
I don't know.
Maybe not.
Yeah. I mean, because there's, female Loki has a pretty big presence
long history in the
comic books. Yeah. So I don't know. I feel like she will appear in the series.
Without a question.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if that's going to be, because I'm like, is that really a secret that you know what I mean, in the show? And I don't know, maybe today in episode 2, they just made it a secret at the end of the episode and they reveal it very quickly at the beginning of the second.
Yeah.
We don't know that
People
yet.
are yelling at us right now because they know.
We already know.
This is why you gotta watch the show.
Yeah. Well, we don't know yet.
But going back all the way to the Infinity Stones thing, I thought it was, first of all, the guy who plays that TVA agent at the front desk and his banter with, Loki.
Hilarious.
He's freaking hilarious. Yeah.
Really
it was
funny.
so funny. But he's like, where'd you get these from? These are like the most powerful things in the universe. He goes, oh, the people around the office just use them for like paperweights.
Oh yeah, we get a lot of those.
We get a lot of those things here. So it was just like hilarious. And he's like picking up these like, oh, you want this? The cosmic cube. He's just like handling like these most powerful objects and artifacts. It's just like paperweights.
Because he's like, yeah, it's useless. What do you want? Okay, here you go. It's like asking for a belt buckle.
Yeah, they're just like nice, like fancy rocks. So I just thought, dumbing it down to that is really, really curious. But I'm wondering too.
But it was smart though, because they did such a good job with those pieces of showing how powerful the TVA is. And that's what a lot of all those pieces were for, was to really that was the other thing they did super, super well with this episode. Like in one episode, we got this really great character breakdown, you know what I mean? In-depth review of who Loki is as a character. But we also got this awesome look and introduction to the TVA. And we have to mention too, the style that they have used for the TVA, the cinematography, but also like that 70s, 80s vibe.
But it's kind of futuristic still.
Yeah, but it's mixed with like sci-fi. So cool. I absolutely love it.
You got to take a ticket.
That was the other really funny one. Yeah. And he sees the guy get totally evaporated. He's just like, oh, where's my ticket?
But it's just so funny because there's only one guy in front of him and he's waiting in like this Disney World type queue.
He's like, take a ticket.
Where he has to like freaking weave his way through. So, and that's another thing too, another little Easter egg. Miss Minutes is actually voiced by Tara Strong.
That's right.
Voices Harley Quinn,
Raven.
Batgirl, Raven, Bubbles from Powerpuff Girls. Like she's like the queen of like voiceover. So now she's in the MCU.
Incredible.
She's officially in the MCU.
Good for her. Congrats, Tara Strong.
I know, right? I need a Miss Minutes t-shirt now.
We actually got. You guys will see when we get the video version of the podcast back here in the next couple of weeks. You guys are going to see Miss Minutes on the set.
That's right.
We actually got one of Displate, one of our favorite
lovely sponsors.
Sponsors. We love what they do, and they do the metal posters. We're actually big fans. We buy their stuff on our own, even without them being a sponsor. But we actually got one of their displays that has Miss Minutes on it. Super
Kang
cool.
One, Kang the Conqueror.
Yeah, Kang the Conqueror. But the TVA stuff, I love the style they use for that.
It's really, really cool. I think you're going to see a lot of people wearing TVA shirts pretty soon here, just because I like stuff like that, like wearing like Gotham City PD and stuff like that at TVA, where it's like nerdy, but you would only, if you know, if you don't, you don't.
Exactly.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like freaking like Captain America slapped on your shirt. It's something that like if someone notices what it is, you're like, oh, you're one of us. Like, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But Kang the Conqueror, when do you think he's going to show up, or is he going to show up? Because a lot of people are theorizing that he might be one of the timekeepers, because they showed the three of them in the animation form for Miss Minutes, and they're behind the Renslayer's judge desk or whatever have you. So people are saying that the one in the middle kind of looks reminiscent of Kang.
A little bit.
And he is like a master of time travel, and the MCU doesn't do everything exactly like the comics.
This is true.
So what if they, change it up a little bit to be like, oh, he's literally one of the masters of time because he's Kang the Conqueror.
It's possible. I mean, because a couple of things that stood out, I should say one of the things that stood out is that we also saw in the background a Skrull in the episode.
We did, when they were getting checked in.
Yeah, it's exactly right.
Yeah.
And we saw a Skrull. And, there's like little things here and there that are really kind of hinting at the Secret Wars, right? So, and this has been true since Phase 3.
What if this other Loki is a Skrull?
This is kind of like, it goes to what we were talking about before, right? Of like, what other characters could be a Skrull? That sort of a thing. And so,
Sharon Carter.
I'm kind of wondering.
Sharon Carter's a freaking Skrull. I'm calling it.
Well, that's so funny that you say. Well, because Peggy Carter was potentially also in the background of the first episode.
I saw people like pulling up little, like they were zooming in.
Yeah, and it's pretty hard not to, like, people are like, well, it could be. It's just.
Because another agent was pulling her through too.
Yes, in the background when Loki first is trying to escape.
I saw that.
And it's like, it's Peggy Carter. It's identical. You know what
Haley
I mean?
Atwell, right? That's who plays
Haley Atwell, yeah. So it's either, and it's like, is that relevant? Is there a relevance to that? Is there a relevance to the Skrull? So in terms of like the Secret Wars and, the role that, these characters play, it really makes, I think some of these things are being thrown in as just fun Easter eggs and also diversions to keep people,
for sure,
off the scent.
It's just fun for like the people creating the show as well. Yeah.
And it just keeps people guessing, which is part of the fun. But with Kang the Conqueror, there's been so many different storylines with him. Where, like for instance, with the, his role in Contest of Champions and so on, different things that he's done throughout Marvel Comics, where you could see how they might, justify, okay, we'll revamp his mythos in the MCU and make him one of the timekeepers that maybe deviated and went off on went rogue or something like that. You could see how argue, but I think that would kind of strip some of the fun out of that character if they make him that powerful, like a deity.
Right. Because
Kang the Conqueror he's really a human, that just has incredible technology.
Yeah.
And then goes throughout time wreaking havoc, essentially.
Yeah.
So to some extent, I think that you would kind of do a disservice to that character, but as we've seen with the MCU, there's so many different directions they could go. They clearly don't mind, seriously upending the apple cart if they think it fits what they're trying to accomplish.
For sure. Yeah, they've changed several characters quite a bit in the MCU.
Significantly. So my guess is if we are going to get Kang the Conqueror in this series, I mean, if they go that drastic with the change, I have no idea.
I feel like
if he does appear, I think it's going to be probably halfway through the season.
I feel like they're just going to tease him because we know he's supposed to be the main bad for Ant-Man Wasp, Quantumania. So, I feel like they're going to introduce him here towards the end or cameo him because you're dealing with because Quantumania, I'm assuming, is also going to deal with, the quantum realm and timelines as well. It seems like a lot of these Marvel movies now, right, are dealing with all the timelines where you got into this Spider-Man No Way Home, which is rumored to be, the Spider-Verse. Then you have Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Then Quantumania. Now this. There's so many of their things are dealing with multiverses and timelines now. As of Endgame, really, because Endgame kind of set that off. They're like, that's the funny thing with time travel, right? Once you open that bag of worms,
it gets convoluted real quick.
No going back. And Endgame opened it, and now it is. We are full. What is the term there? Full boat of steam. That's not a thing. Full boat of steam. I aborted that quickly.
Well, full steam ahead.
Full steam ahead. There it is.
Yeah,
sorry, I had
We're full boat of steam.
We're full boat of steam. Let's do this.
Oh man.
Anyway,
I mean, but it kind of in that vein where you're talking about with Spider-Man No Way Home in the multiverse and all of that kind of stuff, that kind of speaks to one of the other things that we're going to talk about is with Morbius. Or Morbius. Not Mobius. Morbius.
Mr. Morbius.
Yeah, not Mr. Mobius.
Morbius?
But the recent information about Morbius, where is it Tyson?
Yeah, Tyson.
Gibson.
No, not Tyrese.
Tyrese Gibson.
Yes, from the Fast and the Furious franchise,
That's
where
right.
people most know him from.
Who was playing a role in the Morbius movie recently, whether he slipped and it was a spoiler and he leaked it out on accident, or whether it was, intentionally planted. He confirmed that Morbius is in fact in the MCU.
Which is it's crazy, but not, because we kind of knew that, right?
We knew, because we saw, again, that was my argument.
In the trailer.
We already really know that they are tied together. It's just a matter of where's that, which direction is it going to go? Is Sony's stuff going to end up in the MCU, or is Spider-Man and the MCU's version of Spider-Man going to be departing and going over to Sony? That's the question.
But the weird thing is, though, because I remember when we saw, what was it? We saw that Morbius trailer like 2 years ago now.
Yeah, that was a while ago.
This was before the pandemic.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah, and Michael Keaton Vulture was at the end, and everyone was like, what? But the thing, like, at least for me, I was like, okay, so does that mean that he crossed over in the timeline? Or are they just saying all these Sony movies just take place in the MCU? Like, there's no timelines. It's like they just exist in the MCU. But it's like because they've done it where they haven't, they played it vague enough where they haven't said one way or another.
Exactly.
So like Venom, they in the first movie, you could easily bring him in because you never said he wasn't. You never said he did until you want to, which I guess we'll see in Let There Be Carnage. But it's like, it's kind of weird though, because for me the tones are kind of off though, right?
Very much
like so to like that's where it's off for me, where it's like it's open to where they could bring it in, and it seems like they are. Morbius, most definitely, with the Vulture thing, and now one of the cast members who's in the movie saying that it is in the MCU. So it's like, okay, that's weird though. Like it's kind of, I don't know. I don't feel like it's going to be a super organic shift, or at least I'm worried that it's not going to be a super organic fit, because again, Venom, like, I feel like if Feige in the MCU would have done that Venom movie, it would have had a completely different tone and feel.
Oh, that's right? Without question, yeah.
And I just don't know. Even with the new Carnage, Let There Be Carnage trailer, which looks fun, and I definitely want to watch it, I'm like, well, if this is the movie that confirms that it is in the MCU, it's like, so now you have Tom Hardy, Venom in the MCU. You have Woody Harrelson, Carnage in the MCU. You also have Toxin, who is gonna have a little part in that movie as well. So you're bringing like 3-4 characters over just from that movie alone. Right.
So Scream, right?
Scream is rumored to be,
or Shriek.
It's Shriek. Shriek is in it as well. So it's like, but like again, I don't know if the tone. I just don't know. Like, I don't know how much say Marvel had with those movies. You could tell it doesn't seem like that much because it's completely different from any of the MCU stuff.
Which in and of itself is kind of concerning.
So I'm a little worried. In my mind, I was like, oh, maybe it's just alternate reality stuff. But if they're just going to go the route where it's as simple as, no, this is just part of the MCU, and now we're just going to, we just never mentioned it in our movies now because legally we couldn't, but now that's what we're doing going forward.
Yeah.
So, but that also means now Feige doesn't have complete control over the set of Spider-Man movies.
Well, that's one of the things that is actually the main reason why I think signs are pointing towards Spider-Man is leaving the MCU and Sony is just going to be taking these characters back, is because you would think, now this could not be the case. It's possible. But you would think that if the intention was for Kevin Feige and the MCU to absorb these characters completely and have them crossover, right? That Kevin Feige would be involved in the producing and the direction of Morbius and Venom and so forth, right? And to our knowledge, there's no sign of that.
Right.
He's not involved. In fact, he's been in interviews where he basically has said, I don't have the time, the bandwidth, and there's been rumors that he just flat out behind the scenes is like, I do not want to be taking over those as well. Because
do you remember that interview with, it was during the first Venom movie where Feige and I believe one of the executive producers of Venom,
Sony.
Yeah,
No, it was one of the executives from Sony.
The interviewer asked is Venom in the MCU? And she's like, yeah, totally. They're all in the same world. And he was like,
but they asked, I believe, that there was going to be crossover.
Right.
But she was just like, oh, you never know. It's possible. Could happen.
Well, she was very much saying, no, it is.
She was,
at least the interview I saw.
Kevin Feige just looked like deer in the headlights, like, hello, darkness, my old friend.
Well, it was very much like his facial expression was like, no, but I'm not going to say anything because that's going to be awkward. So it's like, but if this is turning out to be true, was it just he didn't want that cat out of the bag yet?
Maybe.
Or was the deal not even finalized yet? Because that was a long time ago. The interview I'm referring to was like 2 years ago.
From everything that it looked like all the way up till now was that he wanted no part of that business. And you can't, it's not like Kevin Feige is just, he's, stayed in the same spot in terms of his role or his executive authority or anything like that, or his creative authority. He's actually been promoted since then.
Oh,
he actually has a larger, he runs all of
Marvel comics and everything.
Everything down the line now.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at like, what does Kevin Feige want? Well, what Kevin Feige wants is like outside of the actual executive branch of Walt Disney Corporation, what Kevin Feige wants to do with Marvel is like final say, right? So if all signs were pointing towards he wanted no part of partnering directly with Sony in terms of Sony having direct input on the creative direction of these films, stories, and all that kind of stuff. It very much seemed like we want Spider-Man for the MCU. We would love to have additional characters, but if you're not willing to, if we can't strike a deal, then Spider-Man just goes away.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I.e., what just took place not that long ago, where, Tom Holland was basically begging Bob Iger, please work something out, right? Because it was going to be, the contract was going to revert back to Sony, and then Tom Holland was going to be basically, in Sony's hands to some degree if he was going to play Spider-Man again.
Right.
And it was going to be totally out of the MCU. It was going to be done.
And that's when the Infinity War gift was going around. He's like, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. I don't want to go, Stark.
But it was the same deal with the X-Men and Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
Right? They couldn't strike a deal because Kevin Feige wanted full control. He didn't want a partner. So Disney just bought the whole freaking thing. You know what I mean? Because they wanted those characters.
If you can't make a deal, you buy it.
And I think that a part of the 20th Century Fox acquisition was them saying them learning from what's gone on with Sony and them saying, we don't want to do this
just
again.
Buy it.
Yeah,
buy it.
Let's just buy the whole thing. We'll take the whole catalog. It comes with a bunch of other stuff.
We get
these characters back and they'll make us billions. So that was definitely but anyway, point is that you take all of those things into account and it doesn't paint a picture that Kevin Feige's like chomping at the bit to like have a joint partnership, MCU situation with Sony.
Not at all. And
at least not from the public side.
Well, it's like, because
you never know what's going on behind
he's the guy who runs Marvel Studios and Marvel, right? So why would he want to have to report to another exec from a different studio? It's like, no, this is what I do. I have final say with this.
And he's had full creative control this entire time.
To massive success.
Yeah, to probably arguably the greatest franchise success of all time cinematically.
Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that, you obviously Star Wars and some others.
But you're talking about 20 plus movies now.
Exactly. And it's unprecedented.
A theme
what
park,
they have done.
like attraction, like land now.
Everything from what they've done with Disney Plus and the crossover. I mean, so many things that were unprecedented, never really done before or tried even.
Yeah.
Particularly not to the success level. So you kind of take all of that into account and you're like, this guy's had full creative control this entire time. Disney has kind of let him do whatever he wants.
Yeah.
And it's been wildly successful. Why on earth would he be interested, in being in this situation, putting himself in this position where he now has this other company and other executives who have not been successful with their runs with these characters, to where they have to thumbs up or thumbs down, the direction of the characters or the films themselves. That's been, I think, the major pushback. It's been the money. And who gets what say?
It's weird to me that we haven't got anything from Spider-Man No Way Home, because that movie's supposedly supposed to still be coming out in December.
Well, we're supposed to get a trailer drop soon.
We're supposed to any day now, but
Hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, no, that was going to be very talented. We're going to say that as soon as this episode goes live. As soon as this podcast goes live, the trailer's going to be out, and it's going to be like, why don't you talk about the trailer?
That's probably.
Why don't you talk about the trailer?
That's probably the post-credit scene in Loki episode 2.
Dude, how often does that happen to us? We'll record a podcast, and then right after, like, the new Snyder Cut trailer will come out or something big, and we're like, of course.
Happens constantly. And it doesn't matter what day we shoot a podcast either.
No, it doesn't. Like, watch, I just tested fate. It's going to drop
you
like tomorrow morning.
Now.
Tomorrow morning, we're going to get the Spider-Man trailer.
And we'll be right back here blaming you for the entire thing.
But it's like we talk about this a lot. I'm just very curious to see where Spider-Man and these Sony characters will live within the MCU. Like, is Spider-Man going that way to Sony, or is Sony coming back to MCU this way?
Yeah.
Like, that's the two options, right? Because either Tom Holland is going over to Sony, and they've been making all these villain movies. So, because when they finally get their Spider-Man, they'll be ready for a Sinister Six, and that'll be a big pull, because now it's Tom Holland Spider-Man versus the Sinister Six. Or they're just building a universe to give the catalog to the MCU and the split profit and all that stuff.
It seems counterproductive, but we'll see. We'll see how it all plays out. I'm just very interested to see whether or not this Loki series is going to directly impact the Spider-Man film coming up because of the multiverse factor and all the things that they're doing now with the TVA. And they've introduced through this entire, the presence of the TVA, the entire storyline and backstory of the TVA that was introduced to us in the first episode. And also what's going on with Loki and how all that's going to play out, where he's now going to be acting as a time cop, going through and hunting for what Morbius tells us is a rogue, dangerous Loki who's going through time, just wreaking havoc. So, I'm super curious to see how it all plays out. But knowing now for sure that Morbius is officially in the like we said, we already knew, but getting that confirmation on top of all of this stuff, just furthering that they're breaking open this multiverse. And it makes almost anything possible. Right. Thus, what we're talking about Kang the Conqueror and so on and so forth. So we'll see how it all plays out. But one thing is for absolute certain: just watching the first episode of Loki, absolutely amazingly good from top to bottom. For sure. From an actual storytelling perspectives, the characters,
I'm curious to see
acting, everything about it was great. It is just in one episode. It's my favorite MCU Disney Plus series so far.
It's definitely my favorite pilot thus far. I'm curious to see where it's going to go from here. Like if it's going to be able to sustain this level of goodness. Yeah. But Loki's a great character. He's a fan favorite for a reason. So I think as long as they keep writing it this way and giving us an interesting take on the character, I think it could be the best Disney Plus Marvel show to date,
without any doubt.
And Tom Hiddleston,
Kate Herron, I don't know, Kate Herron, the director. Man, she is in that first episode. I can only speak to that.
Is she doing the whole thing?
I don't know if she's actually directed the entire thing, but I can tell you that I think she's done the entire series.
Oh, so this is...
I don't know that for 100% sure, but I think she's done the entire series. But that first episode, she just knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, no, everything about... I don't really have a single complaint about this first episode. And I just want to see more Owen Wilson. Like, I'm glad that he's back. Owen Wilson, like he was, Wedding Crashers is my favorite comedy of all time, and he's one of the leading stars in that movie, and he's just Meet the Parents. He's got a role in that movie. It's for Owen Wilson. Owen Wilson's amazing, so it's just good to have him back because he definitely growing up he was one of the comedy go-to guys.
Oh yeah,
like him, Ben Stiller, Vince Vaughn, like that little clique. Like they were the guys. So I'm glad to see him.
His
back.
role as the cowboy in the Night of the Museum.
Oh yes,
so fun.
See anything he's in. So welcome back, Owen. Welcome back
for real. And man, I said earlier, he might be my favorite
and he's in
part
the MCU
of
now
the entire first episode. I absolutely, man, his portrayal of Mr. Morbius is great.
It is pretty good.
He's got that perfect balance of serious, and there's this lightheartedness
fun,
to him.
He's got a little
kind of fun and little jokey.
Yeah,
where he's in the elevator, the talkie, that whole thing. It's just
Wilson,
yeah, it's just his whole, it's his persona.
What is the wow?
Yeah. Wow.
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 I love how certain actors have that. McConaughey, all right.
Yeah, right.
It's just like you say that and everyone knows exactly who you're talking about. I feel like it's a matter of time before Vince Vaughn makes his way into the MCU.
Oh, could you imagine?
Because he's a good serious actor,
what
too.
would he play?
I don't even know. That's a good question.
Actually, I know we already have it cast. He would have been interesting as Kang the Conqueror.
Vince Vaughn?
Think about his size and his physical makeup. Because Kang the Conqueror is supposed to be physically imposing.
For sure.
And have you ever seen Vince Vaughn in person?
In person, no.
Yeah. So I stood next to him one time. I was in LA. And I was like shocked at how big he is.
He's like 6'4" or something like that, right?
He's like 6'5".
Oh, wow.
He's a really tall guy. And but he's you know how some people are like tall and skinny? He's skinny, but not. Like he's thin for his size, but he's got like width to him. So he's like a pretty big guy. So it would have been, once they got him and all of the makeup and all of that kind of stuff, he might have been a cool and interesting. But
Majors is pretty rock.
But Majors is going to be great.
Yeah, he's going to have more of that athletic, like build, the athlete build.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
I just don't know who else he would play that at least is in the running currently as like, hey, this is a potential, character that could appear.
I don't know.
I don't know either. I'd have to think about that one.
Yeah, because I feel like he wouldn't be like. I mean, you could probably cast him as a hero.
But you know what would be funny? If they did a cameo with him at the TVA.
Yeah.
Right?
Like he's
somebody who has
there.
maybe like a little bit of an office grudge match with Mr. Mobius. And they kind of little banter back and forth.
They do like comedy there.
Yeah, just a quick cameo.
That could be cool.
That could be fun.
Yeah.
But, I doubt it.
We'll see. Maybe
It's
Ben Stiller will make his way into the MCU as well. We'll just get all of them. We'll get
Although Ben
Will
Stiller is
Ferrell.
a very good serious actor.
All of them are. Vince Vaughn
Vince
is.
Vaughn is too,
Will Ferrell is a good serious actor.
True.
Comedians usually
Will
are really
Ferrell
good.
is a little bit more like it's very hard to take him seriously.
But you've seen it. Well, I guess what was that movie? Stranger Than Fiction.
Stranger Than Fiction.
Yeah,
he was very good in it, but there was a lot of humor in it too.
But I don't know. I feel like most comedians are really good serious actors.
There's a reason for that. It's a very hard thing to do.
Yeah. Well, I think Jim Carrey's one who explained it. He said because being funny and comedic is the hardest thing you could do. It's the most out there, craziest version of yourself. So when you're playing a serious role, you're just bringing yourself back in.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's also the timing.
Yeah.
Comedic acting is the most difficult in terms of timing.
You lock it up.
Yeah. Because there's so much, not just charisma, but so much chemistry that has to hit just right. The timing has to be perfect. Your delivery, there's so many factors that aren't quite as intense for dramatic acting, or especially like action films and stuff like that. So yeah, there's a reason that comedians it's more likely that a comedian can be a good serious actor than a serious actor can be a good comedic actor.
For sure.
So it's very interesting. So I would be curious to see, but I would have a hard time seeing Will Ferrell in any kind of a superhero. He's one of those comedians though, because and this is why.
You just see Buddy from Elf.
Yeah, he's one of those comedians where Jim Carrey falls into the same exact category.
But Jim Carrey's a really serious actor.
He's done some serious stuff.
Yeah.
But even when he does some serious stuff, it kind of sometimes can fall into the overacting category because he's so because his comedic style was so over the top,
right,
that he kind of drags that into his dramatic acting. The type of just serious acting that I thought was perfect for Jim Carrey was The Truman Show.
Oh, right. Where
it's like a little bit of an in-between, which is very similar to Will Ferrell with Stranger Than Fiction. It was like that in-between where they still got to be funny. There was some very light, the character's very lighthearted, but there's serious beats. Adam Sandler and Spanglish is another good example of that.
Adam Sandler in Uncut Gems.
Uncut Gems.
Adam Sandler in Uncut Gems was amazing.
That was the first time I've seen him. Well, I mean, he did Punch Drunk Love too, which was very good. But he's done more serious stuff. But Uncut Gems was by far the most intense I've seen him.
Yeah, and him not being nominated, at least for Best Actor, was a thievery.
A lot of people weren't happy with that.
But anyway, Tim, Bad Batch.
Bad batches.
Bad Batches.
Bad Batches.
We have finally.
Oh, when I looked, Kate Herron is directing the entire series.
Oh, good for her.
Yeah.
We are current.
Good job.
We're current. We are finally freaking.
We are
current.
finally current. Because you finally watched the show, and I'm proud of you for that.
You mean you finally watched the show?
No, you finally watched the show.
Leaving me on that cliffhanger from last week. or the week before actually. But
we are up to speed now.
What is it? 6? We're 6 in.
Yes, I'll say that.
Okay, so that means we get to talk
I
about,
don't know actually. Is it 6 or 7?
I think it's 6. Okay.
I've lost complete track because I'm watching Superman and Lois. We've got Loki now. Bad Batch.
Let's just pull up the app because I could do that. 7. You're right. So 6 and 7.
Okay.
6 and 7. All right. So episode 6 is Decommissioned, and episode 7 is Battle Scars. So
and there's not a ton.
Why did I say it like that? Battle Scars.
Battle Scars.
So you ever say something, you're like, why did I just say it that way? That's weird. But Decommissioned, that was a solid episode just because, at this point in time, now we see that the Bad Batch has essentially teamed up with Sid, who basically has agreed to hire the Bad Batch to do missions for her, and in return she gives them credits to help pay off the debt that they owe, but also to get where they need to go because they need some money to hide and do stuff in the galaxy. So now it seems like the series is kind of taking a little bit of a shift where we're going to see from here on out, at least for the foreseeable future, every episode they're going to just be doing missions for Sid, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean it makes sense.
Yeah. But I don't know how long I would like that. Would you want because there's 16 episodes I believe this season, so would you want the next 6 episodes to just be Sid, what's our mission? They go out, this thing happens, they go back to Sid.
No.
Right. Yeah. I feel like
no.
I wouldn't want that to be every single episode. But these last 2 that have done that, really, really cool. Very, very cool.
Yes, they were very good.
And especially episode 7. That's because
yeah.
like most people, my favorite clone trooper is Captain Rex.
Yes.
He's Anakin's boy. He's Anakin's
his right hand,
captain.
yeah.
His right hand, right? So
outside of Ahsoka,
right? As far as in the clone army goes. Right. So seeing him back was dope.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Seeing him, and then the whole explanation, because that episode was really cool. Just because if you've been watching this season, the last several episodes, Wrecker has been having headaches because of the
which
chip.
you knew where that was going
for sure, but you knew he was eventually going to snap. Which spoiler, he ultimately did. There'll be spoilers for these 2 episodes, but it was really cool to see that the reason they brought Rex in is because we find out he's the guy who knows how to get rid of it.
Yep.
And he actually got rid of his.
He actually took his own out.
Right, which they alluded to, but they didn't really tell you how exactly. They did, but they didn't. They left it vague enough where it's like...
Well, they touch on it in Clone Wars.
Oh, do they?
At the end of Clone Wars.
See, I still haven't watched the end of Clone Wars.
I know. That's where you're falling into trouble.
They touch on that? Do they? So you full on know?
Yeah.
So I'm the one in the dark just because I haven't watched season 7 a noob.
Way to go.
Boo. That's so sad. Dude, it's just so... Because, I'm almost tempted to just watch season 7.
I told you that before.
You think I should just watch season 7?
Just watch it, because it's going to take you 15 years to watch the
But, I'm going to be missing... I'm going to be missing, all, the Darth Maul... Well, I know Darth Maul is the big part of season 7, but Darth Maul's in it before season 7, and his brother is in it and stuff like that.
Darth Maul obviously plays a huge role in season 7.
Right, but I'm saying he's in it, and he's in more seasons than season 7. He's in it before season 7.
Course,
his brother's in it as well.
Yeah.
So it's I don't want to miss all that stuff.
I mean, you can go back and watch it.
I guess that's kind of what I'm doing anyway, right? I'm kind of...
Yeah, you're all over the place. So it's just go watch it.
So wait, if I watch season 7, you're saying a lot
because the Bad Batch is introduced in season 7.
Yes, I know that.
So you should watch that anyway just to have full context.
Do they explain what happens to Echo in season 7? Is that what they explain?
Yes.
So that's
where you learn where he came from and how the Bad Batch became a whole unit and the whole deal. And you see how they interact in the Clone Wars and all that. It's super fun.
I'm just gonna watch this. I'm gonna go 6, and then I'll do 7. Or rather, I'll do 7, then I'll do 6, then I'll do 5, then I'll do 4. I'll go backwards. I'll count it down. Let's see how this happened. I'll even watch the seasons backward. I'll start with episode 22, then 21, 20. See if it can all make sense to me. Yeah, anyway, I thought that episode was really, really cool, especially the Montel mix or the Mantel mix. Were you not Galaxy's Edge, bro? Galaxy's Edge, because we find out that Omega and Wrecker celebrate every mission with Mantel mix, which is essentially just colorful popcorn. And that colorful popcorn...
I was wondering if you're going to bring this up because...
You could buy that at Galaxy's Edge, and we ate it.
Dude,
we've had it.
It's in our episode when we're at Galaxy's Edge. We showed you guys, if you haven't been there yourself when was actually a super fun ad. because I watch it with my kids, of course.
Yeah.
And as soon as it came up, I just started laughing, and I was like, what? I was like, they're adding stuff from Galaxy's Edge in Disney World. That popcorn you can buy in the what do they call? It's not like I was going to call it a town square.
It's not the Black Spire Outpost, is it?
Well, the Black Spire Outpost is the entire land.
Oh, okay.
It's called Black Spire Outpost or Batu. Well,
yeah,
it's
Batu, yeah.
Well, the land is called Black Spire Outpost, which is supposed to be on the planet of Batu.
Oh, okay.
So, there's a name for that, the marketplace.
I don't remember.
But do they just call it marketplace?
I don't know, but that's where you get like
there's shops and there's the restaurant
wraps
there.
And stuff like
yeah,
that.
exactly.
Oronto wraps.
Yeah. So you can get like all kinds of stuff there, but that's where you can actually get the
Mantel mix.
The Mantel mix. And
Although
saw
I
that,
don't
I was
believe
like,
they call it Mantel
fun.
mix at Galaxy's Edge.
I honestly don't remember.
So, but I wonder if they will now.
Yeah.
Because there's two. Because I know you can get chocolate covered popcorn at Galaxy's Edge. You can also get the one that was in Bad Batch, which is the colorful, like it's like red, purple,
if they weren't
orange.
selling it before, if they stopped selling it, they're going to start again now.
No, I'm saying I know that there's just two different kinds of popcorn you can get. They have, because when we went, they didn't have the chocolate covered popcorn. They added that after.
Yeah.
So you have the colorful one, which is the Mantel mix, and now you can get chocolate.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, if you want to see us eating Mantel mix in Galaxy's Edge, you can go and check out our
it's good
our breakdown video when we were there.
We could relate to
That's
Wrecker.
exactly right, and it was actually it was actually good, like you said.
Yeah.
It was good, and that was a really fun ad because I was like, oh man, we actually ate that too.
But tell me if you were more. I feel like this episode 7 was besides the pilot, the 70-minute opener for this season, was probably my favorite episode of the season thus far.
Yeah, 6 and 7 both were very good. I thought episode 5 was really good. The last 3 episodes, I would say, all have been really, really, really good. But the 6 and 7 were both really good. I'm trying to think. 7 was just solid all the way around. Was it episode 5?
With what?
Was the one where they were battling?
Fennec?
No.
Fennec Shand.
I can't remember. Again, too many shows in between. But episode 7 was excellent.
And it had some of the prettiest shots out of the season thus far. Like when Rex is walking up on the wreckage, because they go to essentially a starship graveyard because they have to go to a Jedi ship in order to use its medical bay to get the chips out of their heads.
Which was very reminiscent of Jedi the Fallen Order. The video game?
Yes. And even Fallen Order, and even some of the shots reminded me of Force Awakens.
Yes, exactly.
Where you see like the Star Destroyer in the sand and stuff like that. But anyway, just the cinematography in this animation, and you just see Rex walk up and Bad Batch behind him, and it does this wide of like the world. It was so cool. I was like, this is beautiful. This is beautiful. Like, I just want that to be my wallpaper.
This is beautiful.
It's just a gorgeous looking show. It's funny too because I'm still, as you know, we just talked about, I'm still trying to make my way through the Clone Wars. I think I'm on the last half of season 2.
Oh my Lord!
I know I'm gonna be on this forever,
dude. At this pace, and you're watching the Skywalker series,
dude. That's the problem. I have too much, dude. I'm watching.
You're doing this to yourself.
I'm watching Castlevania, Superman and Lois, Bad Batch, Loki, the Skywalker saga, Clone Wars. What else am I watching? I started the MODOK series. There's just so much to watch, and I don't have enough time. It's just so much stuff, and that's like, there's just not. It's like all I would have to do when I get home is just watch TV shows, and I just can't do it, or stay up till like 4 a.m. watching TV, and I'm not gonna do that because I'm old now. I got 2 kids. I'm snoozing like latest midnight.
Yeah, no, I'm watching Loki, Bad Batch, and Superman and Lois, and 2 of the 3 of those I've only been able to really keep up on because my sons like beg me until I watch them. Like Bad Batch, I've gotten behind several times because I cannot fit in. Typically, I can't fit in more than 2 at a time.
Well, good thing for Bad Batch, they're like 22 minutes.
Yes, they're very short. That's the only reason I've been able to do it at all.
Yeah.
Superman and Lois is an hour long.
And so is Loki.
Yeah, and Loki is too. But Loki, I'm not going to miss Loki. That's my show. I mean, Bad Batch too. I love Bad Batch.
I just watched Revenge of the Sith.
Oh, yeah, that's
not
right.
Not like, if everyone be like, you just watched it, I just rewatched it. Because, again, if you don't know, I'm going through the entire Skywalker saga again in order from episodes 1 through 9. and we finally finished the first trilogy. And I obviously I've seen all these movies several times. I grew up, especially the prequels. I grew up with those and the original trilogy, so I've seen them countless times. But I haven't seen them in a few years here, at least all the way through, right? Like actually sat down and watched them from beginning to end. And dude, Revenge of the Sith is good, dude. I don't care what anyone says.
It's better than I watched.
Freaking
it
love that movie.
Ago. Yeah.
Like I knew it was my favorite, and then watching it again, I'm like, oh, this is why it's my favorite. Because just like, it's the turn of Anakin. It's how you see him becoming Vader.
Yeah.
It's like the coolest part where he turns evil. There's several like lightsaber battles. You see how Palpatine becomes the Emperor. Like just so much in it. Where you're like, Order 66 happens in this movie. Like you see freaking Commander Cody from Clone Wars in this movie. You see Commander Gree get decapitated by Yoda. Yep. Like there's so many like throwbacks to like you. It's funny because I haven't seen this movie in a while, in a few years, again, all the way through. So I'm like, oh my God, so Clone Wars. Oh yeah, so Clone Wars. It's like, you forget that, obviously Filoni took all the Clone Wars stuff from the prequel trilogy.
Exactly.
Like, it's literally the point. But it was weird, like, I forgot, shockingly, that Commander Cody was live action in Revenge of the Sith. And, that's Obi-Wan's right-hand man. That's his commander for the Clone Wars.
That's right.
So I was like, oh, that's crazy. I forgot he was in live action because he's in it like in a few scenes. He doesn't have big scenes, but you see him in there, and you see Commander Gree, the camo clone warrior, get his head chopped off when Order 66 is initiated. So Yoda's like, nope, and
off with his head.
But so I loved it. I love the movie. Yeah, it's cheesy and stuff like that, but like certain parts. But I would say out of the Skywalker saga, it's probably going to be top 3 for me.
Yeah, I mean, that's totally fair.
Yeah.
That's totally fair. I actually, when I introduced it to my kids just a couple of years ago.
I feel like it's going to be Empire, Revenge of the Sith. I think that's going to be my, like, number 1 will be Empire, and Revenge of the Sith probably 2. I think so.
Wow.
I'm going to, again, I haven't rewatched all of them all the way through in a like around 2 or so years here, so I'm going to make my way through the original trilogy, and we'll see.
I would put that as my favorite, but it would still rank number 4 for me. The entire original trilogy would come before that one.
Oh, really? So you still put Return of the Jedi?
So I would go Empire, Return of the Jedi, A New Hope. Well, maybe New Hope, then Return of the Jedi.
I just love the turn, seeing the turn of Anakin, because that's
probably New Hope.
Because the Skywalker saga, I mean, it's all about Anakin, really, right? Like it becomes Luke and stuff, but it's really
it has some great stuff.
Yeah,
in it.
It's Anakin's story. So
my issue with the prequel remains the acting.
I kind of like
it. I mean, it's very Lucas. It has a novelty to it,
I'm whispering
obviously.
it. Yeah, it's like it's just its own thing. I don't even, because I know for a while everyone was like, Hayden Christensen was whiny and horrible. I'm like, I kind of like it.
Well, well, for me, it had more to do with like how George Lucas directed actors.
Okay.
Throughout all of his Star Wars films.
Right.
So obviously, you had like with the first trilogy, you had Harrison Ford, for God's sake. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You had really charismatic acters in the first, and then that's not to say that they didn't have charismatic actors in the other ones, but in the second, he was using so much technology, new technology,
right,
in ways that had never even been tried up until that point. So he was doing a bunch of things that these actors had never really experienced before. And so and because George Lucas he's kind of like Alfred Hitchcock in a sense, that he just wants the actor to act and he doesn't really focus on it a ton. There's a lot of robotic scenes where the dialogue is delivered kind of very choppy, and when
Anakin's talking to Padme, he's like, "Don't you turn on me?"
Yeah, exactly. but it's just a little bit, but in a way, now looking back at it, it has a novelty to it because it's unique to that franchise
for sure.
So it doesn't bother me as much now as it did when I first saw it. When they came out when I was younger, where I was just like, man, why are some of the dialogue delivered so like badly?
Yeah, but it introduced so many fan favorites though too. Like you got Grievous from there, Dooku from there,
a ton of really fun stuff. But when I watched it again with my kids, I was like, oh, this is much better than I remember. I enjoyed it much more.
I enjoyed it thoroughly,
but it would still rank number 4 for me. The entire first trilogy would come before that one.
I think I was talking to my wife. I was like, "So what's your favorite?" And she said, "Literally, 3, 2, 1." So Revenge of the Sith the best, then Attack of the Clones, and the Phantom Menace. I'm like, I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
I think
that's the right
But
order.
it's funny because usually when you do have trilogies, the movies get worse as they go on. Usually the first one's the best, and they get worse. This one's the opposite,
total opposite,
where they get better as they go on, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, the Phantom Menace to this day is.
I still liked it though. It's the worst out of the
even
three,
my kids were like, "That one's rough." Like young Anakin, my kids I felt bad, but they laughed.
I'll tell you one thing.
Like, he's terrible.
Jar Jar not being in Revenge of the Sith made me so happy.
Yeah.
So I was like, because he
plays an even bigger role in the Clone Wars.
No, I know. And those episodes,
was Amber like ready to pull her hair out?
Jar Jar, yeah. But and I totally agree with her. I'm like, I think most of the fandom does. He's like, he's just the.
Poor Jar Jar.
Did you see the documentary where Lucas said that Jar Jar, like the whole like, how did he say it? He pretty much said that the prequel trilogy hinges on Jar Jar.
Yeah.
I'm like, what are you?
He loved Jar Jar.
I'm like, what are you talking
about? Or loves.
I'm like, okay, this is your world, man. You're the man, but like,
do whatever you want.
But Anakin, not Anakin though. Really, not Anakin. Okay.
Well, it's kind of like Zack Snyder saying the entire Justice League story hinged on Cyborg.
But that makes
not as bad. That's not as bad, but it is in the sense that it's the character that you wouldn't expect.
Yeah, but Cyborg was awesome in the Snyder Cut. Jar Jar was never.
Yes,
awesome.
that's true. That's why I said it's not the best example.
The whole
because Cyborg was good.
Misa, it's just like, oh, stop it, stop it. Stop it.
Jedi?
Ugh, just
oh god.
Poor guy. I remember when we saw him at Star Wars Celebration, the actor,
and he was doing the voice.
He was doing the voice, and people were clapping for him. I was like, good for you. Good for you. I'll clap for you too. I mean,
Jar Jar has been redeemed.
Yeah, you're definitely not my favorite character, but I'll clap for you. Live your life. Anyway, Tim. So,
we do have to say about the Bad Batch, they did finally get the inhibitor chips taken out of their head.
They did all
of
them, which is good. So now we know they're not going to turn. But that means now.
But Wrecker did for a minute.
He did, which was that whole thing was dope because you see him going after Omega and stuff like that, and he went to apologize.
And she had the Mantel mix,
the Mantel mix, yes.
and she's like, can't break tradition.
Yeah, well, that was funny too because
I thought it was really cute
because Sid prior to that, like she's saying that they're in debt to her. He's like, debt to her. He's like, yeah, for fuel, all these costs,
gear, weapons,
Mantel mix, 17 credits for Mantel mix,
a ton of it.
Yeah, and then it cuts right to them eating it, and you find out that's what their tradition is. And he's like, and Record literally says, "Put it on Sid's tab."
Yeah,
but
really good.
So I can't wait for another episode. I'm still loving that series. It's
great.
You know, I'm Star Wars mode right now. Minus I can't get through the Clone Wars because there's just so much.
Dude,
maybe I should just stop watching everything and dedicate to Clone Wars.
Even if you do that, you're still going to be watching it till 2023. So I don't know that's possible.
I don't know why I never watched it as they came out. I'm like kicking myself because I remember them releasing on Cartoon Network weekly, and I would just watch them sporadically, but I wouldn't watch them like religiously.
Well,
like
I watched
Batman the animated series or something
because I didn't finish it either. I watched most of it.
Oh,
you know, because a mutual friend Bruno, who actually used to work here at Triumph Films for us, he was absolutely sad. Watched every single episode, and he was constantly telling me. He's the one who actually said to me originally when it first started, he's like, dude, you have to be watching this. You're a Star Wars fan. I was like, yeah, I just haven't had time. Then I started watching and I loved it. But I actually fell off like at season 4 or 5. I think it was the end of 4. And it was my sons. They started watching it and I was like, oh, let's just watch it together. And so we kind of just worked our way through the entire thing over the course of a like 6-month or 8-month period.
So you from 4 on?
No, they watched from the beginning.
Oh, but did you?
So I kind of like was in and out. I would sit down with them. They'd have it on.
To be fair, that's a thing that's been a little hard to get through. Like it's a fantastic series, but there is a lot of filler.
There's
a lot of episodes you don't necessarily have to watch.
Because there's a lot of episodes per season. It's like 20 to 24. 22.
So like they'll do like one of my complaints was that they'll have like a Jar Jar episode where he's off doing something with Padme that has nothing to do with the main story.
Yes.
And it's just like, all right, you're going anime on me here, giving me filler.
Yeah. So that's why I would jump in and out like while they were watching the first 4.5 seasons or so, and then when it got to the part, it was like, okay, now I'm gonna watch. We watched the rest all the way up to it. And we were ready to go for season 7
for sure, for sure.
Great.
But I guess we should stay with Disney and Marvel, Tim. Stay with Disney.
I mean, might as well. It's like 90% of all content.
It's just short. We're not gonna have much. We're not video game people, so we're not gonna have a lot to say about it. But Guardians of the Galaxy is getting a video game.
I know.
Which will be on PS5, PS4, Xbox One, and the Switch, Nintendo Switch. So it looks
fun.
It looks dope. It looks cool. I will say you know, again, I don't know much about video games, so I don't want to be like, you know, act like I'm an authority on the subject or anything like that. But the graphics don't look as good as I thought they would, and I don't know if that's just because they're still like, you know, showing games this early, they're not final. So even what we see is not like the final product. So I don't know if that's it, or maybe it's just the stylization they chose for it. But it looks fun. It looks fun. They're definitely a hybrid of comics and MCU Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yes.
And it it seems like everyone's trying to do their, like, because ever since like Batman Arkham Knight came out, or the Arkham games in general, Arkham Asylum, the first one that kicked it off, you know, everyone's trying to do their own thing like that. We had the Avengers game came out, obviously the widely successful Spider-Man games for PS4,
right?
Which are really, really good. Those are essentially the Arkham games for Spider-Man. But Avengers wasn't actually that successful for Marvel.
Shockingly, because there was a lot of anticipation for that game. A lot of
anticipation, and it seemed to let most people down, or at least a good amount of people down. Like, there's not a lot of talk about it. So I'm curious to see where Guardians of the Galaxy is going to land with that.
Me too. You know, it's like all these video games, you know, some of them, you know, you hear there's a lot of hype and buzz around the game before it comes out, and then it hits and you'll hear about it because of the way things work with gaming. And well, I guess it's just also just the nature of the beast now in terms of trends. It's not like, you know, I would say 10 years ago, 15 years ago, especially 20 years ago, where like something would hit and it would be popular for the year. Right. And it would be that would be the thing for the year. Now trends hit or popular things last, and it'll be for like a month, 2 months, 3 months, and people are on to the next thing. Right?
There's so much.
Yeah. Like, look at, like, I would say Fortnite is a good example. Fortnite lasted a freakishly long time in terms of its popularity. But, you know, in terms of how big it got and how popular and how profitable it was as a game versus how long it was like at its peak popularity before it dropped off and, you know, people were on to like what's next. It's a really short period of time, like in terms of comparing it to like historically. So, you know, with these games, it's a little bit hard to gauge on that front because, you know, you can have these, you know, even really hot games come and go relatively quickly where people will be on, you know, that's why you'll see prices drop after like 2 months on a lot of these games, right? Maybe not 2 months, but just a few months anyway. So I'll be curious to see if with Guardians of the Galaxy, if it's more like an Avengers or if it's more like the last Spider-Man game.
Yeah, from the vibe I got, it's going to be more of an Avengers, especially since it's a team game.
Yeah, but I think some of that has to be, it's like, is it the Guardians of the Galaxy theming?
No,
I mean, think there's going to be a lot of anticipation or like excitement about a game that's centered around the Guardians of the Galaxy, I guess is the question for me.
I don't know, not like Spider-Man or Batman, right? That's why they were so, but I mean, just the playability for Spider-Man and Batman were so freaking good though too. And this is different again, where it's a team, so it's like, I don't know.
Maybe if you're flying the ship or...
It's one of I'm not a big gamer at all, so like there's very few games that I'm excited for. So this is like something I would play, but like even though it's a superhero game, I'm still not like overly excited. Like I like Spider-Man, I'm all about, and definitely the Arkham games. Those two are like the ones I have to play all the time. So
yeah, obviously I'm not a gamer at all myself. I play games from time to time, but I would not be considered a gamer in the least.
Could you imagine if I played video games and tried to watch Clone Wars?
I don't. You would never be at work. But I can see the allure. I can see like why people would get excited about a Spider-Man game or a Batman game because of the gadgets you get to play with, swinging through city, grappling through the city, you know, different things like that. That's instantly like, oh, that would be fun. Or like even a Superman game. We've talked about that before, how cool it would be if they did like a really dope Superman game.
In the vein of like the Spider-Man games.
Yeah,
and stuff like that,
where you got to really fly and use
open world.
Yeah, open world type setting. You know, I can totally see that. With Guardians of the Galaxy, it's almost like, I don't know, in my mind, I'm thinking like, oh, is this, you know, some kind of similar to some of the Star Wars video games where you get to fly the ships and, you know, have, you know, galactic battles and things like that. Is it, you know, how is it going to play out? But I can't quite latch on to what is the main excitement, you know what I mean? The main attraction for a game like that versus, say, a Spider-Man.
Yeah, well, you know, we'll see. I guess like being Groot, maybe, with your Vine arms coming out.
That could be fun.
Star-Lord's got his blasters.
Yeah, being Rocket
like
might be fun.
Being Rocket, with all
his artillery and weapons.
that'd be fun. But, you know, don't have much to say about it because we only have a trailer, and again, we're not big gamers.
Yeah.
But we had to mention it at least for people who would be excited for this sort of stuff.
Yeah. And let us know if you're excited.
Yeah.
Like for all of you guys out there, if you're excited about that game, let us know if you are and why. I'd be curious to know.
I wonder how many people are disappointed with us every time we're like, we're not massive gamers, because like gaming is like huge, right?
It's massive.
But I'm very casual. Like I just have a Switch, and mostly because I could play it in bed. It's
right
portable.
there. You just lost your street card.
Well,
right
I have an Xbox One, but I rarely ever play it. Like literally, I probably play it a handful of times a year.
Yeah.
Just because, especially with 2 kids now, it's almost impossible to like sit down and pay attention and actually play a video game like that. So the Switch is like, it's easy because I can just pull it in bed and I'll just play on the Switch and stuff like that. But anyway, last bit of news, Tim, Batgirl, Blue Beetle, getting live action treatment, as people may have known. But what you may not know is that HBO Max recently announced they will be exclusive to their streaming platform.
This is true.
So these will not get theatrical releases.
This is fact.
They will live on HBO Max, much like how Netflix has, like Army of the Dead, Zack Snyder's new film. So it's going to be a big blockbuster movie, but exclusive to HBO Max.
Yeah.
I love Batgirl.
Yeah.
I'm a big Batgirl fan.
Me too.
They haven't cast her yet or anything like that, so I'm still excited because it's just Batgirl. Blue Beetle, I like Blue Beetle, but I didn't really.
He's a cool character.
I've mainly read him in other books. I didn't read like the Blue Beetle book much, and I liked him in Young Justice and animated series and stuff like that. But I'm not like a massive Blue Beetle fan, but I like the character, so I'm excited for that. But Batgirl, is this in the DCEU? If so, I'm definitely curious.
Well, when you say the DCEU, you're saying Zack Snyder's.
Well, I mean,
the Snyderverse.
What is the DCU now, right?
Exactly. That's my point. It's like, what are we talking about?
Well, I mean, Shazam's film in in continuity with Black Adam, Shazam, Aquaman 2, Wonder Woman 84, all the stuff the stuff that currently does exist.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because the Snyderverse stuff is like,
I don't think we're
out. But
again. It falls in
worlds, I guess.
Yeah. It falls into the camp again, I think, of we're not going to know any of that until we find out what they're doing with Flashpoint.
I'm just so curious who they would cast as her, and like if it is, I'm excited for like the costume too, because if it is in the DC, like her Batman is Ben Affleck, that means the costume is going to look like a female version of that, which would be dope.
That could be very cool.
Very cool. So
that could be very cool. Again, it's like everything. You wait and see. I am fully checked out.
Or will they connect this Batgirl to the Batman?
That's possible.
Right?
That is possible, but I have a hard time.
Oh, you know what?
I have a hard time that being the case.
We're getting an HBO Max GCPD show.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking.
That's in that continuity as well.
That's what I was thinking it was going to be. It was going to be more towards, is the GCPD series, it's tied to the Batman?
Yeah, it's in that universe. Matt Reeves is actually involved.
Oh, that's right. Yep. That's right. I'm thinking of, what was the series? I'm getting the two confused. I was thinking of the series that they were talking about. They were in talks to do with Ben Affleck.
Oh, how he was going to get
his own television show.
Yeah, his own Batman.
Series
miniseries
or whatever.
That would deal with Deathstroke.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, that's a rumor still. We don't know if we're going to get that.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it would make sense for them to do that if that is in fact the case, and it is in any way being overseen by Matt Reeves. That would be really exciting.
So you would rather it be in that universe than be in the DCEU?
150%. 150%. Because this news of both of these films being, because one of the things about Blue Beetle,
I don't know where I would want it to live, honestly. I'm kind of torn.
In terms of universe?
Yeah.
For me, that's like a no-brainer. Because here's the problem.
I want the DCU to be successful so bad.
I do too. But outside of what Matt Reeves is doing, it's an incoherent mess. So, we don't know. Again, Flashpoint is probably going to correct a lot of this in the sense, at least give us an idea of their overall thinking. Like all of this stuff is existing simultaneously, just in different places and that sort of a deal. And that's fine. All of it can live on its own. Until then, I don't know. I would just like it to live inside the Batman, because that also means that it'll probably be overseen by Matt Reeves, which means the continuity will be there, the quality will be there. Because my concern about both of these landing on HBO Max right from the get was the quality. It's like, and I know it's HBO, and HBO has a great track record, but Warner Brothers does not with the DC universe. So my question is this going to be let's say the Batman or a Joker? Or is this going to be a Titans series.
I would imagine since they're supposed to be theatrical release quality, they would just still be like $100 million films just for HBO Max. Meaning the quality should be there.
That's what you would hope. That's what that's what you would hope. But at the same time,
what you're saying is you have no trust in DC / Warner Brothers.
Correct. 100%.
Let's just get to the point here.
100%. I have been very clear on this. Until they prove me wrong, until they prove otherwise, I am going to anticipate that it's going to be questionable, and then be pleasantly surprised when it's not. So I'm not disappointed.
Well, I guess, that's all we really have to say about it, because there's not really much to say about it besides the fact, hey, they're happening and they're going to be HBO Max exclusives.
Although I will say the mythology around Blue Beetle could be very, very fun.
Oh, for sure.
As a film, which is why I was excited for them to do it in the first place.
Can you imagine, like, I don't think you would start it off with this, but doing a Batgirl movie that could ultimately lead to a Killing Joke storyline, right?
Could.
Oh my God. There's just so much potential. This is what frustrates me with the DCU. Like, they have some of the best stories of all time for comic books and heroes. And it's just like, give it to someone who can make it work.
And again, with what they're doing with J.J. Abrams and Matt Reeves, that could very well be the case. We might be on track for that to be the case. It just has not been, it hasn't come to full light yet.
There's lots of DC, stuff in the workshop. We got freaking Shazam, Fury of the Gods currently filming. Aquaman 2 is in pre. Yeah. Then you got Black Adam filming. You got The Flash filming. There's just so much stuff coming down the pipeline, and I'm sure I'm even forgetting like a movie or two. But the future could be bright. Could be. I hope the Flash movie fixes stuff, because another thing they're saying is that Grant Gustin Flash from the CW will be making a cameo in the Flash movie, which would be funny and make sense because Ezra Miller Flash made a cameo in the CW Flash show.
Right.
So I feel like that's true because that only makes sense. Ezra Miller already appeared with him on the CW series. So, and we already know Keaton's in it. So that's multiverse stuff. We know Ben Affleck's in it. So it's like, that's what I've been saying for years that I want. Like, make the synergy. You could have your cake and eat it too. Just be like, it's different worlds and stuff like that. I just don't know how they're going to, again, I'm like beating a dead horse here. I feel like I'm talking about this all the time. I borderline just want to stop myself.
It really is, yeah.
But I will say this, and that is it, without going on a 30-minute rant. I just don't know how you could say the Zack Snyder stuff is Elseworlds or not continuity of the DCEU when you have Aquaman 2 coming out, which is the same Aquaman, Wonder Woman, who's getting a third movie and just had Wonder Woman 84, which is the same Wonder Woman, Batman, which is currently in Flash, same Batman. Like, all these characters that are in this movie are currently
Shazam.
Well, yeah, in reference his universe too. So it's like, how do you make that work? You just say those were alternate reality versions of themselves, but that means you erase everything that was connected to. Like, it just gets really confusing, and I guess you could still fix it because comics, but I don't know. Flashpoint is the key, but it's just they have to do it smart though.
Yeah,
because you could still make it a mess because time travel is confusing.
And that's partly why I'm saying, like, if they actually allow, let's say, Abrams and Reeves to act even jointly as like as a Feige type role.
Supergirl's in the Flash movie as well. That's
Supergirl is also appearing. Yeah. So if they actually allow that and they start to set the entire DC cinematic world on a particular course, and they use Flashpoint to do it, let's say, and they're just kind of quietly starting to straighten and right the ship behind the scenes, which, the heavy speculation and all, vantage points are pointing towards J.J. Abrams was brought in to do that on some front.
Yeah.
And if that ends up being the case, I think in the long run, it will be fine. They'll figure it out. They'll work it out, and it'll wind up being great. It's just currently, especially with the position that we're in, where all the limbo and the stuff around the Snyderverse that's still completely unresolved. You know what I mean? Until we get past this time frame and we see what they do with Flashpoint, as you said, it is the key. We're just going to be left going, I guess we're just going to have to wait who knows how long until we see where all this is going.
This is why you don't make stories unless you know where it's going.
Yes.
You have to have an ending. Yeah. I think that's a takeaway from this podcast. That's the whole takeaway of the entire podcast. Abrams. You have to have an ending.
Exactly right.
But on that note, Tim, I think we should wrap this up.
We have covered lots of ground, and to sum everything up, Loki is great.
Bad Batch is great.
Bad Batch is great. Morbius in the MCU is good news also.
Batgirl and Blue Beetle, we don't know what to expect.
Yeah, and everything DC. We will, as always, as anything with the DC universe, we will see.
And Guardians of the Galaxy, the game, is a thing, and can't wait to see if it's good or not.
Yeah, and we don't care about video games.
Yeah, we suck at video games now.
No, we do care about video games. We do not care about video games.
We're not cool enough to understand said video games.
We're dads, is what we're saying.
There's so many other dads listening, like, that's all I do, and I'm a dad. Hey, man, I like video games. It's just
I do too. Yeah.
It's just, I like comics more. I'll say that.
Yeah, this is facts.
But with that, we'll see you guys next time when we talk about all things comics.